So yes, we're going into another holiday week. This Thursday is the 4th of July. It's our Independence Day. Some folks are already on the road. Some will soon head out to the beach or to meet up with family and cook out in the backyard of whatever family member has the best grill. Some of you brave souls will make your way into the crowd at Stone Mountain or one of the other parks to watch the big fireworks up close. Some of us might just order pizza and watch the fireworks on TV, I don't know. But we'll take a day off from work and we'll celebrate the independence of our country. And we like the idea of being independent. We like to be able to make our own decisions and to create our own laws, our own rules, and basically just do things our own way. As Americans, we're taught from an early age to value being independent. I know I was. At some point, you probably all heard that phrase, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And God helps those who help themselves. And I'm pretty sure I've said this before, that's not in the Bible. And it's not a particularly biblical idea. I mean, it is important to take responsibility for our own actions. I'm glad my parents taught me to do my chores and to work hard and to plan so that I would have a career. But the idea that we should be completely independent and not need help is actually a dangerous idea. And again, it's not biblical. It's not what God had in mind for our lives. Because to be human is to be social. Relationship is in our genetic makeup, and that includes sometimes needing help. And of course, we start our life needing a lot of help. As infants, as toddlers, as precocious preschoolers, and even as defiant teenagers. We need a lot of help. But gradually we mature, but we're never really completely self-sufficient. And that's okay, because that's the way it's supposed to be. And this, I think, is the truth at the heart of the scriptures that we're reading today. For our gospel story, try to picture this scene. Jesus is inside a house with people all around listening while he's teaching. It's probably something more like a beach house, fairly open with big windows sort of opening out and big doors, but people are standing in and outside and all around looking in. And then 3 men come up and they're coming towards the house and they're carrying someone on a stretcher. Maybe the other guy's in front trying to push their way through the crowds. Let us through. We have someone who needs to be healed. They've heard that somebody is in there that has the ability to heal, maybe even someone who's paralyzed. So they try to make their way to the door. The crowd is too thick. No one's willing to give up their place. Just outside, straining to hear what's going on inside. Maybe annoyed at these guys trying to push their way through. So these men regroup and they talk and they point and they go around the back and maybe they find a ladder. They find a way to begin to get up to the roof and they start pulling the stretcher and somebody gets up and finds some ropes and attaches it to the edges of the stretcher. Somebody starts pulling away the tiles on the top of the roof to make a hole and they cautiously get their friend down in front of Jesus. And we can imagine being one of those listeners looking up, surprised, maybe annoyed, maybe impressed at their creativity. Jesus looks at the men who are leaning in and asking him to please help their friend, and he is impressed. And so impressed with their active, dedicated faith that he looks at the paralyzed man and he speaks healing words over him till he is able to get up and go out on his own. Now, I love this simple story of just one day in the life of Jesus and his friends. So I think it's an important story. It's like a microcosm of our lives. Because each person in this story plays an important part in the drama that is going on. And the question presents itself to us when we read this story: who do you identify with? Who can you relate to in this story? Who do you feel like today in this story, this week, or this year? Do you feel like the person who needs to be carried to help? Are you one of the determined, hopeful, caring friends ready to do whatever it takes to help the people in your lives, the people you love, to find wholeness? Are you out there in the crowd wanting to learn more about life, about God, looking in, seeking meaning, maybe a little annoyed with all the people who get in your way? Can you relate to Jesus, who's so overwhelmed with compassion, he's ready to use whatever power he has to heal those who are broken? I think this beautiful scene is a snapshot of our lives, and I love this story, a metaphor for what it means to live together in community. It's what it means to be church. Each one of us might be a different character in the story at different times in our lives. Sometimes we do find ourselves searching for meaning. Today, you might feel like the people on the outside. I'm just hungry for some wisdom in my life. I want to get closer to God. I don't know how. I need to learn how to live better and happier and have meaning, have purpose, and that's why I'm here. Sometimes we're the ones in need of healing. At some point in our lives, we are broken, physically, emotionally, maybe emotionally paralyzed, unable to get up or get well or get our strength back on our own. And as much as we hate it, we all find ourselves vulnerable. That thing we never want to be because we want to be independent. Having to ask for help, dependent on others to pick us up and carry us towards hope. But then there are those times in our lives when we have the strength and the resources to reach out and to help others, to help our neighbors, to help our friends, or even the strangers that God brings into our lives. At those times, we feel like those friends who knew where to go for healing and who are ready to pick up their friend and walk or run or whatever it takes to get help and to get someone back on their feet and back to life. And sometimes we really can, maybe, relate to Jesus in this scene. Sometimes we're the healers, using our gifts to bring wholeness, to bring health to someone else. Whether we're nurses or doctors or counselors or friends with that calming touch and that healing prayer, that is that one thing someone needs to come back into their lives. This little story is a story of community, a picture of life, because we all have gifts, and we each have needs. And at different times in our lives, one is stronger than the other, but throughout our lives, we all have the same goal, the goal of growing and maturing, both physically and spiritually. And these are goals we can only reach together. And this is what Paul had in mind as he's trying to lead a community of faithful people. Those in Ephesians, he's telling them about bearing one another in love, using our gifts, equipping each other for maturity. Paul says he's heard of their struggles and he's heard of their faith. And he says, I beg you make every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And we know unity of spirit and the bonds of peace are easier said than done. It doesn't happen spontaneously. It takes effort to live in community. It is like keeping a beautiful garden. It takes constant tending. It's never settled because we are always changing. Now, Hannah Hill spoke last week about the value of recovery groups. And I probably say it a lot. The church is a recovery group. The church should be more like recovery groups. For the goal of a person in a recovery group is to be sober or to be straight or to be clean, The purpose of the group is to support each member in staying committed to that goal day after day. And there's no expectation that because you joined the group that you have met your goal or your work is done. Suddenly you have it all together. No. Every day is another opportunity to stay faithful to that goal, to trust in God, to trust in your higher power, the highest power, and to trust in your fellow group members to give you that strength that you need to get through one more day. Every meeting is a chance to share mutual joys and struggles in this ongoing process. The goal of each one of us as Christians is to grow in spiritual maturity, becoming more like Christ who lived in mutually loving relationship with God and with others. Out of that one main relationship, Christ was able to share respectful, loving relationships with other people. That is our goal. But there's no expectation that just because you joined a church that you have met that goal, that you are finished. You are a shining example of spiritual maturity. Every day is another day, another opportunity to stay faithful to that goal, trusting in God and trusting in your fellow members to give you the strength that you need to continue every day. You are always in that process of growth, like the plants in your garden. Only we are being rooted and grounded in love. And you're not alone. You have a community of faith to support you, and you have gifts to share with those around you. As individuals who have made a commitment to trusting in the grace and the love of God, we need to recognize that our lives are always a work in progress. Our goal is to mature as individuals and to mature as a community of faith. And we can't do any of it alone, because each one is only part of the whole. The body of Christ is all people working together to make the world a better place. All of us knit together like parts of a body, each promoting the growth of the whole, built up in love. Paul uses the word equip to describe what we're doing together, equipping the saints. But it's more than training, it's how we tend to hear it. It's about healing and it's about restoration. The word equip in Greek comes from a word which describes the setting of bones during surgery, of putting things back together and holding them together and growing together and fostering healing. So in the church, just like in families and recovery groups, we might disagree on things. We might choose to do things a little differently. But in the end, we're all in this together. We are not independent. We all have something to give, and we are all in need of help. And working together isn't always easy, and living together in community can be complicated. Even when we mean well, we don't always communicate well, we don't always do it right. But speaking the truth in love, we will continue to grow together and mature, each one promoting the growth of the whole, building one another up in love, one day at a time. So who do you feel like today in this story? Are you looking in the window hoping to learn how to have a meaningful life? Do you feel like you're being carried on a stretcher in need of healing? Are you lifting up someone who is depending on your strength? Are you sharing healing words, mending broken lives? And who will you be tomorrow or next year? There's no telling, but what you will be is a part of this story, a part of the community sharing strengths and struggles and joys of life together, as together we trust in the Spirit of God to carry us through.